match, we gonna make it happen.
Let's do it. Scotty, Davo, all y'all.
Scotty, Davo,
Let's do it.
AK.
We need that
This
game.
is what the
We
people
need
want
that
to
game.
see.
We want to see no other game. We need
That's
that
what the
game.
people want to see.
It gotta
That's
all
what I'm
be
saying.
together. And we
Yeah.
just missing too many
But
games, bro.
yeah, you know, that it's a lot of games that haven't happened. Even like they say their side or this side. It's a lot of games that haven't happened on either side. So I understand right now we got more time, but it's gonna get to a point where it's like, all right, we don't want a game to dry out. You know what I'm saying?
We need way more people on both sides to come together so we can have way better 2v2, 3v3 tag teams and all that shit. Like the fans don't feel like they're getting slighted. Especially when you talking about the fans, they're spending their money getting involved with this. They buying pay-per-views. They deserve the pay-per-views they want to see too. They deserve them best pay-per-views, like them big games. I feel like we should come together at least once a year, right?
I would love to see it off the dribble or Ballers Life versus however you put it, but versus Next Chapter. I feel like it'd be, one of the biggest one-on-one events ever. It could be like a once a year thing or something.
That's
you know
what
what I mean?
That's what I'm.
Or even if it's gonna be one time, if it's only gonna be one time ever, like
I've said it plenty of times, like both sides will exist in the space, both sides will succeed, but the idea of like all coming together, it makes sense to come together if everybody's vision was exactly the same. And of course there wasn't some underlying tensions that exist, but I just really do not think that the visions are the same. So it's kind of counterproductive for us to like try something else that's not even what we're interested in doing.
You tripping, bro. You tripping.
They're gonna come back, right? You have all of these like people. Dev was trying to get it at going at some point. The only people who aren't playing ball is TNC, right? That's why TNC is getting most of the flack right now, for one. For two, what is being asked of TNC is already based in compromise. And it's the fact that TNC is not willing to compromise with something that's already based in compromise. The fans essentially want to see one event. One event. All right. So I'm just going to use this opportunity to go over the next chapter's public statement under the 1v1 hoops video. Since everyone does want to buy into so many narratives, at least allow for us to explain ourselves. And I know this is long-winded as F, but I'm going to try to put it all out there for y'all because we rarely speak out. If you want to learn, then read. I'll genuinely try my best to let you in on our mindset and hope it's understood. This is an important time for this community to understand, not to judge any platform, not hate, but appreciate them for all they bring. So here, read if you would like. All right, so right off the bat, I'm just going to address certain criticism on the internet in terms of what I'm saying. It's coming from a place of tough love. It's not hate. It's not baseless. It might come off that way if you're strictly reading comments on certain platforms under your videos and you decide to focus on the negativity and whatnot. But in terms of this, in terms of what we're saying right now, it's coming from a place of tough love. I've been a fan of this scene forever. And obviously, I believe I said this in the beginning of the video, nobody's unappreciative, right? Seeing where stuff was from the beginning a couple years ago to now is insane. There's sponsorships, NBA players. It's almost like, what more can you ask for besides this, right? So we're going to go ahead and address that. But no one's being ungrateful. No one is hating. You know what I mean? We just want to see the space elevate in a particular way. So ever since the beginning of TNC, our goal has always been to build this into something sustainable, not just content for the moment. This mic is kind of far away. I'm going to bring it a little closer. But something that can actually last. And when we partnered with Terry 2.5 years ago and now circle back to it, it's because this has always been part of the bigger vision. You guys know we've been preaching that we want to build the NBA of YouTube basketball, or even Netflix of YouTube basketball, or the Netflix of YouTube basketball, where we can help co-produce major events and elevate players, brands, and the fan experience as a whole. And even sometimes that means we take some heat because we're focused on providing more value long-term than just chasing a short-term high moment. In this case, that might look like giving Baltimore the opportunity to have the biggest event possible while supporting their best players, and that's a risk we're willing to take as a brand because it's what we've always stood on. We didn't build a platform of over 1 million followers by taking the easy path, but by doing things the unconventional way. Okay, sure. The reality is our role in all of this is to step in and support platforms that are great at developing talent and finding the right players, but might not have the global reach or resources yet, so we can amplify what they already do well. We're not here to take talent or steal the spotlight. We're here to provide platforms that want to work with us, the resources, the exposure, and structure to make their brands more meaningful and valuable. And we've already shown that with Born Ready and now with Terry, while also opening conversations with our platforms to keep growing this in the right way. I understand there are collabs people want to see, but from the very beginning, we've never shifted our mission to chase what's hot, because to us it makes way more sense to partner with people who want to grow together and recognize strengths on both sides instead of competing for short-term wins. And while every platform has their own twist and is doing things their way, our focus has always been much further ahead than just the moment. We're trying to build something that's here for decades, and that's why investing in smaller channels and brands matters to us, because that's what actually gives life to the community and allows it to grow instead of just recycling the same talent over and over. And I know not everyone will agree with that, but all we ask is you trust us and give us the time to prove it. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to address here. For one, they said that from the beginning that this was their goal from the beginning, and I have a two-part response to that. So for one, saying that you want to build the Netflix of YouTube basketball and the NBA of YouTube basketball, while yes, that was definitely a talking point that Friga and Scotty and them were saying in the earlier days of TNC, that statement doesn't encompass building up smaller platforms that want to work with you so that you can elevate more of this space, essentially, is what I got from that explanation. Your original statement isn't encompassed in what you're doing now. It's unintuitive, which is why when you do certain things, it's confusing to people. And now you're saying, well, this was the plan all along. Well, the plan all along doesn't communicate that you partner, for instance, with smaller platforms and build them up or build up new talent or whatnot, but it doesn't require it, right? It's just the way in which that you are now going about doing what you have originally set off to do, which is fine. I have no point in contention with that. If you want to elevate the space, if you want to become the YouTube, or I keep saying YouTube, the Netflix of YouTube basketball, for instance, the NBA of YouTube basketball, and you're building up all the smaller platforms, that's the mean in which you're doing so, that's completely fine. But we can't sit up here and act like when you say, oh, we're becoming the Netflix of YouTube basketball, that people are supposed to know that that means, oh, they're going to build up smaller platforms and not really work with the bigger platforms, but build up the smaller platforms so that more people can become elevated and this, that, and the third. It's actually the reason why Scotty, when he's making public statements, comes off as sort of convoluted, and it's kind of just hard to follow what the direction or the goal is for TNC, and that's why they're catching so much flack in this particular instance, because it's not easy to follow. And again, the way in which you're elevating your brand isn't necessarily encompassed by your original mission statement. So that's the first thing that I wanted to touch upon. The second thing is that they said I understand there are collabs people want to see, but from the very beginning, we've never shifted our mission to chase what's hot. That's verifiably false. I can list the entirety of TNC 01 was quote unquote chasing what's hot. Friga versus Nas, are you kidding me? That was literally chasing what was hot. Rob versus Scoob, everybody wanted to see that rematch. Literally, if that's the case, why you started off TNC pay-per-views with allowing the fans to choose the matchups based on what they did, what each player did in the season, which is the epitome of chasing what is hot. Because we're now only creating matchups based on the performance, the shortest way you can possibly analyze a particular player in terms of heat, right? Which is through, other than a single game, is merely through a single season. That's literally the shortest amount of time to analyze, okay, is this player hot? Is this player good? What do we want to see? Through one season. Which is why Zay and Isote played, because Isote beat Bruce back-to-back, and Zay is Zay. right? Was Mike Harden versus Cam not chasing what's hot? To be fair, they are going to get into a storyline and whatnot, and that falls more so in line with the storyline. Pat versus Kel was something that brewed for like 2 months and was hot because they were talking shit for a couple of like a few back and forths on Instagram Live. That's the epitome of chasing what's hot. You know what I mean? Why do you think those games are more? And anyways, I'm getting it too ahead of myself. But to say maybe now you're not trying to chase what's hot, but to say from the very start we haven't been trying to chase what's hot. I mean, that's verifiably false. Again, it's this shift without the communication that you are shifting in a particular way. Now we're trying to backpedal and act as though you've never had your business a particular way that is different from the way it is now, which is why people are sort of confused and are calling out certain talking points. Furthermore, they said, we've been trying to build something that's here for decades, and that's why I invested in smaller channels and brands matters to us, because that's what actually gives life to the community and allows it to grow instead of recycling the same content over and over. So they've only recently been building up smaller platforms. The first instance in which they've done this was, well, I mean, I guess they're going to go back to Street Stars, but with the TNC 01, but Street Stars, whether you like it or not, was its own established thing. Absolutely. It was its own established thing before the next chapter is. Was it a smaller platform? Yes, but I don't think that you're going to say that Street Stars is the way it is now because of TNC 01. But that was more so a means in which we could make the TNC 01 matchups happen. It was a compromise that Scotty made with Nas, in just based on what Scotty has said, because Nas wanted it completely over here when it's like, well, no, we can power on TNC. That's just based on certain words that I've heard. It might have been different, but I don't think that Street Stars' success is off the backs of TNC. I don't think we can count that as building up smaller platforms. Therefore, I believe that the goal of building up smaller platforms began during the Born Ready event, which was 2026 this year. So to act like that was always the plan instead of recycling, it's what actually grows the space instead of recycling the same content or the same talent over and over again. I mean, for one, that's what we're doing, right? The request that the fans are asking is literally mitigating that problem of recycling the same talent over and over again. It's okay if you want to shift, you know? But again, there are other businesses that recycle the same talent over and over again. I don't think that's ever truly the case, because you're getting in new players on a somewhat decent. There's a new face every month or so, every month or two. There's a couple of new faces on the platforms, but that's kind of what we do, and there's clearly success in doing it. So to say that that's what actually grows the space forward, I think that there's a lot more evidence to prove that quote unquote recycling the same concept or talent over and over again is a greater marker to success, or not marker, a greater means to finding success than partnering with smaller platforms and help building them up. On paper, that makes sense to elevate the space long term. Like, the more you elevate smaller platforms and the more smaller platforms become big, the bigger the space grows. That makes sense on paper, but to say that it's what actually grows the space forward when we've only been doing it for 2 months, or not 2 months, but from the beginning of this year, 4 months, and you've only done it 2 times, right? But anyways, let's continue. That was kind of a long ramble. Whether people want to admit it or not, TNC has become the standard, the comparison point, the vision that people look at, and we believe it's more productive to help other platforms grow, build their own stars, and create their own products than it is to just constantly pull from the same pool. That's fair. That's also why we stepped away from relying only on YouTube and built our own platform, because YouTube limits everything to subscriptions, while our site allows us to create flexible pricing for events and actually split revenue with partners in a way that makes sense. So when we walk away from events, the goal is to financially empower other brands to reinvest into talent and improve their own products or productions. Right now, the community is spending close to $200 a month across different subscriptions just to keep up with everything, and we're building towards a future where that can be simplified into something closer to $30 to $40 a month that feels like a true home for this space. Okay, well, I don't mind the first part of what he said, or what I'm just gonna say TNC. What TNC said. Right now, the community is spending closer to $200 a month. I don't know where they're getting that figure from, but if anything, that figure would be as high as it is because of TNC. TNC is the only platform that has a $10 a month subscription plan and charges you $20 per pay-per-view. I actually don't know if TNC League gives you the pay-per-view for free, even if you are a member. I have been a member on TNC League. I mean, either way, they're the only ones that are charging a $10 monthly subscription where pay-per-views occur once every 4 months or so. So if anything, that price is being driven up because of TNC League, which I don't necessarily mind it, but to say that you're the ones that are trying to drive down the cost is kind of crazy to me. And then furthermore, wouldn't a way that you would drive down the cost would be to mitigate the need to buy certain pay-per-views by partnering with other platforms, right? Now, it appears that that's what they're doing, but who has the most demand? Is it June's League? Is it just different hoops? Is it Free Smoke Tour? Or is it Hitman Holler and Pep's league? Or is it Ball is Life and Off the Dribble? Which one has more demand? Who are people more likely going to spend an extra $20 on, the extra money on? You know what I mean? So, but I mean, on paper, it makes sense. If people are spending close to $200 a month, which if you're spending $200 a month on YouTube basketball, you're either rich or you seriously need to rethink what you're doing with your finances. But yeah, it would be because of these smaller platforms. On paper, it makes sense, but at the same time, there's a lot of people who you aren't working with that are driving up the cost of this total $200 a month for YouTube basketball. I don't know. Working with them would be an obvious way to cut costs. I think that makes even more sense. At the same time, we understand that not everyone sees it yet, and narratives will always exist. But if we have to take certain criticism or be looked at a certain way while building something that benefits players, fans, and brands long term, then so be it. Because the bigger picture is creating an ecosystem that sponsors can trust, where smaller platforms have budgets to grow, where production gets elevated across the board, and where more talent is constantly being created. Nothing right now is protecting this scene from someone with a lot of money coming in and shifting everything overnight. And we've been aware of that for years, which is why we've been intentional about building structure, from rules to formats to production to promotion, and why we've invested heavily into our own facility infrastructure and live streaming capabilities, because we see where this is going. Okay, so I'll read the rest of it and then I'll finish my talking points. There's a lot I want to address already, but I'll just finish the comment. The reality is YouTube viewership across the entire community is down significantly compared to last year, and that's not random. It's a sign that things need to evolve, because the growth before came from consistency, from new talent, from structured seasons and city-based events, not from overlapping content and recycled matchups. We've also preached saturation being a challenge. Saturation is absolutely wicked now. We believe the future of this space leans heavily into live experiences and structured programming, and we're ready for that. We've put the time, money, and energy into being ready, and now it's just about executing. Okay, I'm gonna break what I just said. The fact that YouTube viewership across the entire community is down significantly compared to last year, I don't even know if it is down. I think it's verifiably false that it's down from last year, let alone significantly. If we're talking about 2026 versus 2025, I mean, no shit. We've had 3 pay-per-views. We had 2025, each major platform besides Balls Life and Off the Dribble has had 3 major pay-per-view events. In 2026, there's only 1. I'm not counting the All-Star Weekend pay-per-view. That's like a one-off event. I'm not counting the Born Ready platform and TNC pay-per-view. I'm talking about the major pay-per-views. We've literally only had one this year. So to say that YouTube viewership is down across all platforms, I mean, you could look at Social Blade. This is verifiably false. From where the space was to where it is now, absolutely not. It's not down across all platforms. If it is down, I took a look at TNC's channel. If it is the case that it is down, it's because one, TNC, you've shifted to like half of your content from 2025 to now is now on TNC League. So obviously that's going to take some viewership away from YouTube. And two, you're releasing less consistently on YouTube than you were, let's say, in 2024, because obviously now you have a different business model. And outside of like this influx of like random interviews and trailers, which obviously isn't going to garner the same amount of views as actual games. When I'm looking at actual games, they're basically the same amount as they were this year that they were last year. The actual games have the same, very similar view counts all across the board. If not, you have some videos that have gotten a lot more views than in the past. YouTube viewership is not down, especially when you have more figures like Marcus Teague and Dean Lamb with the backcourt connection, actual NBA players talking about the scene, joining the scene, G Herbo, other players, other figures outside of basketball, YouTube basketball. You have Austin Rivers talking about it. I mean, to act like down significantly is just crazy. To say that it's down significantly is, I mean, it's just wrong. The saturation is a lot, right? But wouldn't that also contradict the idea that viewership is down? That would mean that viewership is up because the major platforms are remaining consistent, and then you have more platforms, more smaller platforms that are bringing in more views. So everything is going up. It's not down, let alone significantly. Absolutely not. And then again, to say that the reason for it, let's say that it was down, to say that the reason for it being down significantly is because the growth came from new talent, from structured seasons and city-based events, not from overlapping content and recycled matchups. I mean, what are you doing to circumvent that then? Because I haven't seen you be as consistent. There's not a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule anymore. You haven't gone out to a city since NOLA, if I remember correctly. And Ball is Life just went out to Toronto. There was Houston. There was Dallas for Off the Dribble. Or Detroit, excuse me. Okay, let me finish. At the end of the day, everyone in this community plays a role, and less division doesn't mean everyone has to collab. It just means less negativity, less comparisons, and more respect for what each platform brings. Because when platforms are empowered and encouraged to build their own stars instead of borrowing them, the entire scene grows. And that's what we're here for. So all we ask is to trust the process, give us some time to show you what this can really become. Okay, let me finish. Our focus is giving platforms that power to develop their own talent to make them independently sustainable. Borrowing players who are hot doesn't help long term. I'm speaking out more than ever right now because I've been hearing and understanding what's happening behind the scenes. And the truth is, brands are overspending, bleeding revenue, and dealing with inconsistency because everything is moving way too fast, driven by the pressure to force the biggest matches possible without actually growing in those moments. That's a dangerous path because trying to buy your way to the top of attention in the space ends up artificially raising prices across the board and creating inflation for the entire scene. And when that happens, tension builds and toxicity follows. We have the blueprint, we designed it. Now we want to spend our time empowering others to build sustainable brands because that's exactly how we think the scene grows the most. And then that's essentially the end of what they're saying. Okay, so the first part of this is at the end of the day, everyone in this community plays a role, and less division doesn't mean everyone has to collab. It just means less negativity, less comparisons, and more respect for what each platform brings. Okay, so this is like the example of, let's say that you want to get the number 10, right? There's a couple of ways that you can get the number 10. You can add 9 and 1, you can add 8 and 2, you can add 7 and 3, 5 and 5, 4 and 6, right? Just because you can add 5 and 5 and get 10 and add 4 and 6 and get 10 doesn't mean that adding 9 and 1 isn't the better and faster way to do that. Now, in that analogy, you're going to have to ignore the fact that it's literally just as easy to put together any of the two combination of numbers that I gave in order to get 10. But let's just say that there was an easier way to attain a certain goal, and then there's a different way to attain that same goal, right? Just because that there are other ways to attain a particular goal doesn't mean that this way, this tried and true way, isn't like the most effective and easiest way or the most ideal way to do so. Yeah, you could spend your time walking and going out for walks in order to build your stamina and getting in shape, but you know, there is also the treadmill. So yeah, I mean, Scotty is correct in the sense that you don't necessarily have to collaborate in order to get less division in the community. But collaborating is probably the best way to get less division in the community. Now, I don't think that the goal is to get less division. I think that the goal is to give the fans what they want to see. And the problem that I have with everything, outside of the behind the scenes stuff that he says, and it's becoming inconsistent because everything's moving way too fast, brands are bleeding out, whatever he said, which I can't verify, I can't speak to that, so I'm not going to speak to that. That's the only valid thing, you know what I mean? That's the only valid talking point. All the other talking points, mind you, he did not bring up a poor relationship with Ball is Life and Off the Dribble, right? So again, I'm not going to talk about that because that's not a reason that TNC gave in this explanation for not essentially giving us the matchups that we want. Everybody wants to see a TNC and a Ball is Life matchup, right? And the problem that I have is that all of the reasons, whenever I hear Scotty going on live or in an interview, and especially with what I read, the full statement that apparently had everything laid out for us, I'm not seeing anything that prevents or precludes that happening. You know, the TNC X Ball is Life and Off the Dribble event happening. I think that, sure, you can run your business however you want, but I just think that you don't want to do it. And it's okay if you don't want to do it, that's fine. But sitting here and telling me reasons that don't negatively impact the long-term success of your brand, right? And telling me that they will impact the long-term success of your brand or a particular goal that you have in this moment. I mean, I think that's why fans are getting upset, myself included. I get annoyed because Scotty's essentially looking at the numbers. He's looking at I'm gonna stop saying Scotty. TNC is essentially looking at very small margins of success, and you're using that as the main reasoning behind why you're not giving the fans what they want to see, essentially, while also throwing in, this is what we want to do for our business and whatever, which is fine. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a cop-out, but again, that's not really a challenge to what everybody else is saying. I think the problem, in terms like from a fan's perspective, is what we are asking for as the fans, and it's not even just the fans. You have your own players on TNC are saying, I want this matchup. I want this match. Oh, well, we can't because we're on this platform. You know what I mean? That is something that was said in a literal in TNC 03. Like, after he beat Day was like, you know who I want, but I'm not going to speak on that. Like, obviously referring to Nesco, right? When Nesco and Lat and Kel, when they came on another platform, they were literally talking about it. Hey, bring it together, bring it together. You have Marcus Teague and D Lamb, right? Like, oh yeah, the space is going to grow when we come together. Lamar Peters said that the space is going to grow when we come together. You have Davo, I give the green light to my players to do whatever they got to do, and I'm going to accept them back if they want to come back, right? You have all of these like people. Dev was trying to get it going at some point. The only people who aren't playing ball is TNC, right? That's why TNC is getting most of the flack right now, for one. For two, what is being asked of TNC is already based in compromise, and it's the fact that TNC is not willing to compromise with something that's already based in compromise. The fans essentially want to see one event, one event where they come together. And I don't even think that the fans would mind if it weren't even a whole event. It doesn't have to be TNC X Balls Life / Off the Dribble. We just want to see certain matchups where you have a couple of star players on TNC, a couple of star players on Balls Life / Off the Dribble come together for one event, kind of how you allowed Rob to play the Summer Jam on OTD / Balls Life. Something like that, just maybe a couple more players, right? Kind of how Malik came over. Part of the reason why this event, this past Judgment Day, was as good as it was is because we got certain matchups that we wanted to see. We got the two biggest small guards that we finally saw them match up. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's already based in compromise, like I said, to stay on track. It's already based on compromise. The request is based on compromise. Quite frankly, we're not asking for anything that is going to negate TNC's long-term plans. And it's just the unwillingness to even do that. And furthermore, a lot of what they're saying can be debunked. They believe that chasing what's hot in one instance, maybe once a year or whatever, is going to completely negate or ruin that player's chances of a storyline or whatever, like, or that it ruins long-term investments for that specific player. For one, I do have to ask, what are you building these players up for? You know what I mean? If it's not to eventually play against the top talent in their respective class, in their respective strengths and weaknesses, like, oh, this player has this strength, that strength, that strength, and this player over here has that strength, this strength, and this strength. Let's see them come together. Hence the case with like a Nesco and a Lat, right? They have similar strengths. They seem to be the best at those particular strengths. We want to see them go head to head, right? And you talk about not wanting to recycle matchups. How do you essentially do that if you're not taking people in from different platforms? You know what I mean? But furthermore, once those games happen, just to remain on track, once those games happen, it's not a hit to anything long term. If anything, it builds up the storyline long term. Because with that logic, Zay lost to Rob. Zay's career should be over with then, right? Zay has that just added to Zay's storyline. You know what I mean? Which was delved into during this trailer, which Zay and Lamar Peters' storyline has over 119,000 views on YouTube. So you're acting as though once these matchups occur that the stock is going to go down and that there's no sort of longevity there. It's quite the opposite. A loss, win, lose, or draw, it just adds to the storyline. Like I already mentioned in my reply to TNC, why do you think people want to see matchups of games that already happened after a year? You know, like the 1 year mark is when we're like, oh yeah, I think we can see it again because this person has done this, that person's done that. And of course that's based off of how things happened prior, such as the Rob and Scoob, you know. Hence the case with that. Rob skunked Scoob. 1 year later, Scoob beat Rob. Like, people are never going to want to not watch matchups. That's why the space has been elevated to the extent in which it has, right? A loss does not lower the stock of a platform. It doesn't lower the stock of a player, maybe in that specific moment, but in terms of long term, it only helps to build them up. It just adds more to their story. I argue that what they're doing is less sustainable than once a year you come together or just let your certain star players play against the other major platform star players. It just absolutely doesn't lower the stock or the long-term longevity of anything, right? Another example would be, I think that they wanted Nas over for a 7-month contract to play Rob, or before they played Rob, and it's like, what's the point of doing that? And they're saying, I think TNC thinks that if that game were to have happened, then it would have ruined long-term success of the business. I don't know. That's just what it feels like based on what I've read. But Rob versus Nas would have happened, right? I think everybody agreed that game was hot. That's chasing what's hot, I guess. But no, there's a storyline there that's based on years of dominance from both players, and they came together. But then what happened? Not only did Rob lose to DA, that game dried out. And the reason why that game dried out was because Lamar Peters stepped on the scene and he wanted Nas, and then everybody was more invested in Lamar Peters versus Nas, right? In spite of LP losing to Scoob. And I guarantee you, if Lamar bounces back in the next 6 months, people are going to want to see Nas versus Lamar, even though he lost his A. I promise you, right? But like, let's say if that game would have happened, Nas versus Rob, that doesn't mean that, you know, it's all over with. Again, you have the rematch thing 1 year later. That's longevity. And then Lamar Peters came, and then there was a bunch of hype around that game. So even if nobody cared about Rob versus Nas after it happened, there's always going to be another matchup that's occurring that people are going to want to care about. Another big, huge matchup. Just because you have one huge matchup with a player from another platform. I mean, the idea that brings down stock long-term for anything and doesn't drive it up, it's just absolutely insanely ridiculous. Furthermore, I think the only good point that was made was the behind-the-scenes stuff. Conveniently, the behind-the-scenes stuff that we can attest to. I would argue things are happening too fast. I don't know what that means. What is too fast? I think that TNC is focusing. They have the prerogative to do what they want with their business. That's the end of the day, right? But I think that what they're failing to realize is their long-term goals, the goal, the direction, and the goal that they have with the direction of their business does not get hindered by what the fans are asking for and what they are refusing to provide the fans with at this moment in time. And I think that's really it. I honestly think that that's it. Every single point that was made seems to be grounded in sort of preconceived notions and an unwillingness to see it from the other side and to consider someone else's perspective and to make bare minimum compromises, right? So I think that's that. People are going to point to, Davo called Scotty a slave master and whatnot, which that's a whole different conversation. But notice how that wasn't brought up in this response. If it's really that the owners are at beef with each other, are at odds with each other, or the relationship is intact, say that. If you just don't want to work with certain people, say that. But then again, don't let your players suffer because of stuff that you have going on with other owners and stuff. Like you don't have to have the TNC. If you don't want to work with your business, if you don't want to work with someone you're at odds with their business, and blend that over with your business, that's different. That's different than not allowing players who want to have certain matchups happen, fans that want to have certain matchups happen. That's different from implementing a business model that essentially tells them, no, that can't happen because you're at odds with certain people that represent a particular platform. So yeah, man, I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all there is to it. In terms of, this was just live. I did reference a video. I don't think I'm gonna do a full breakdown. I think I pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. Obviously, people are gonna disagree. TNC can run their business however they want to. At the end of the day, that's fine. We're still gonna watch TNC. What they bring to the community was at one point the standard, right? Now it seems that they're moving in a different direction that's incongruent to what a lot of fans want to see, what a lot of owners want to see, what a lot of figures want to see, what a lot of their own players want to see. And I'm fine with acknowledging that we're not going to head in that sort of direction, as long as we acknowledge that the reasons for which aren't really that valid. That's it. Whether you think so or not, whether the numbers don't lie, it wouldn't hurt to have some of your star players once in a blue moon cross over with stars within a different platform. What you're doing and what we're asking for isn't mutually exclusive. One doesn't bring down the other. It might not be what you want to do in this particular moment in time. But it's just the lack of compromise that kind of annoys me and a lot of other people. But at the end of the day, like I said a million times, they can run their business however they want. We're still going to thrive based on how things are, even if we don't get, the matchups that we are particularly asking for. I actually do think that they will happen at one point, just not in the way in which we believe that they're going to happen. The space is heading in a good direction. We're just talking about elevating the space. What TNC is built, what Ball is Life is built, what Off the Dribble is built. Very good. Very good.